When I was a fellow at Harvard, this was the university seal. 3 open books with the letters spelling out the Latin word for truth, veritas. But that was not the university's original seal. If you ever visit Old Harvard Yard, you can see on the base of the statue of John Harvard the way the shield appeared a couple of hundred years ago when it had 3 books and the Latin inscription, but you see the book on the bottom is turned over so that all you can see is the binder and the cover of the book. Now, I'll tell you, humility is a rare commodity at Harvard. Cambridge, as you may know, is the most opinionated zip code in the world. But someone centuries ago wanted to send the signal that not all truth is knowable. Sometimes, even at Harvard, professors can be wrong. Sometimes students don't get to learn everything. There is a mystery in the universe that is not known and may not be knowable. Now, it's arrogant enough for a university to claim that it represents the truth. And in Harvard's defense, back in the 1600s when it was started, most universities had veritas on their seal. But the truth is always a moving target. A sincere scientist, as well as any sincere theologian, is interested in learning, in teaching, and expanding what is known to be true, but that means we always have to be willing to re-examine, to change what we used to think was true in favor of new information. Scott Peck used to say in a lot of his lectures that anything that cannot be questioned is an idol, and all idols are slated for destruction. Now, we all know that the history of science is pockmarked with instances of the Academy refusing to admit new evidence because it negated past understandings. But the best of science is always willing, always eager to consider the evidence and to dismiss previous beliefs in light of new information. I've been saying that religion should be the same way for years, but most of the universe of faith still struggles with the concept of evidence-based faith. When Paul and Dan and I were up hearing Elton John sing, and most of what Elton John did in his concert a couple of weeks ago was stuff that I had on 8-track cassettes when I was in high school. But I heard Burn Down the Mission differently than I had ever heard it before, because for me, just sitting there in the concert, and I'm sure you all had the exact same experience because I told you what your experience was on the way home. Traditional religion becomes like a prison that keeps people from evolving. Why? All of us, probably everyone here, was reared with a prejudice against homosexuals. And once you let that go, why? Why were you ever prejudiced? Because your mind had been put in a prison. So I'm just saying, burn down the mission. I could even add some explicatives to that. Burn it down. Set people free. You would be hard put to find anyone in modern history who took the Christian faith more seriously than my old sage standby, Soren Kierkegaard. But he did not gladly abide fools. He said, there are 2 ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. He also said that no one has done God a greater favor in this season than those who have quit the habit of going to church. I don't want to announce that too often, but let's just say that Kierkegaard and his minister didn't have a great relationship. But what he was begging for, even 150 years ago, was for Christians to think and to evaluate information. And there are 2 ways that you can be wrong. One is to refuse to change in the light of new information, and the other is to insist on holding on to beliefs that are patently false or at least unsubstantiated. It's true that not everything can be known. There's more mystery in the universe than there is certain knowledge. There are whole worlds of things about which we know just a little bit, and often just enough to realize how much we don't know. Modern medicine, for example, has an amazing amount of information about the human body, and yet, if you don't believe me, just ask them. The smartest doctor in the room is always the neurologist. But neurologists actually know so little about the human brain that I think they should be a little bit embarrassed about going to work and cashing their paycheck, because Newt, am I right? They don't know that much. Not really. And as Mark Twain said, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Still, that is nowhere more true than it is in the world of religion. Not to be too enamored with Latin phrases today, but this one hails from a poem that was published before Jesus was born. Virgil wrote in the Aeneid, Haud Ignota Loquor, which is to say, speak not of that which is not known. If you don't know, don't talk about it. You can have an opinion, but don't say it if there's no evidence for it. Religious people tend to act like, because it's religion, they can equate their interpretations to the meaning of ancient texts as actual facts. And again, to be really honest and disclosive, that original veritas at Harvard was truth about Christ for the church. And that Harvard was started 400 years ago to educate ministers. I know several of my peers from there. It didn't work. And that's where, when we were driving back from St. Louis, we also wanted to do I Ain't Afraid. I'm not afraid of the Jesus tradition. I'm not afraid of Holy Writ. I'm afraid of people that think they know exactly what it means and that they get to impose prejudicial judgments against the rest of us. I ain't afraid of your churches. I'm not afraid of your synagogues. I'm not afraid of your mosques. I am terrified by what you do in the name of your God. People will, because they're religious, insist that you cannot prove that it's not true, that there are angels and demons and heaven and hell. Look, folks, to believe what is not true is not a sign of faith. It is a personal, powerful, and individual choice to be stupid. Even I could say that more politely, but I felt like I should say it in a way that was painfully clear. But as the great Dane said, you can be wrong by refusing to believe what is true, but you can also be wrong by insisting on believing what you do not know. Yes, you have every right to believe whatever you want. You can believe in heaven and hell. You can believe in angels and demons. You can believe in the Bible and the Quran and the Upanishads are all divinely inspired. But what reason do you have to believe that? What evidence do you have other than your childhood training and wishful thinking? And people who were important to you as a child might have said they believed it. If you have no reason, well, would you please do the rest of the world a favor and quit talking about it? Haud Ignota Loquor, speak not of what is not known. But on the other hand, don't fail to speak about what is known. I don't even know the source for this list of facts we used as our wisdom lesson today, but it's a list put together specifically for religious people who have tended to deny reality in favor of magical thinking. Starts with evolution is true. Sure, fundamentalists will say, well, evolution is just a theory. Folks, gravity is just a theory, but we don't go around denying the reality of gravity. There is tons of evidence to support the fact that the only thing that militates against evolution of the species is the dogged refusal of fundamentalists to acknowledge its reality. Evangelical Christianity has become what I like to call Darwin's waiting room. The Bible is not inerrant. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this morning because I doubt that anyone in my audience needs much more evidence. But from page 1 of Genesis, we see an account of a 7-day creation of a flat earth that is covered by a solid bowl, hence it is called the firmament, that had windows in it that were opened by angels to allow the water above the firmament to fall on the earth in the form of rain. Religious scriptures do contain many laudable teachings that often, though not always, are valuable for moral instruction, but not one person who set pen to paper to write the Bible, the Quran, or any Buddhist or Hindu scripture had the slightest idea where the sun goes at night. So if you are, for example, a senator from Oklahoma, Mr. Inhofe, who does not believe that climate change is real because of something you've read in the Bible, then you need to claim your seat in Darwin's waiting room and just shut up. Women have the same rights as men. Homosexuality isn't a sin. I think these two statements actually could be more inclusive than they already are. There are differences between women and men. You might not be able to place values on it, but at least historically you can say by trends that there are differences between Jews and Arabs, between whites and blacks, between Asians and Canadians. But ultimately, when you're talking about human rights, giving one set of human rights to one race or gender is indefensible. Gay people tend to be more aesthetic and artistically aware. Asians tend to be better at math and science. White people seem to excel in creating torture devices and military hardware. But these are tendencies. They are not indications of inherent worth. That is, you would need to produce evidence for the reason you would deny human rights to anyone, and on that front, the jury is in. There is no rational defense for either gender or racial prejudices. Owning a gun is not a God-given right. Our indefensibly lax gun laws have made it unsafe for people to go to a movie theater, a shopping mall, to high school, to elementary school, to a country music concert, to church, a synagogue, a yoga studio, or a college bar. Now, our president, who demonstrably, I can give evidence if you need it, is a total idiot and not competent to speak on any substantive issue. Amen. Thank you. You all don't need me to list my reasons for saying that, though. It would be fun. I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to do it. But he announced that if the synagogue in Pittsburgh had had an armed guard at the door. What? Okay, thanks. But there was an armed guard at the college bar in Thousand Oaks, California, and he was the first person killed. When yet another crazed gunman came in, killed the armed guard at the door, and then stepped inside and shot the security people. Then hid and shot the first sheriff's deputy that came in. Trained professionals armed there to defend people. There is no defense against a person who is determined to kill and is willing to die. Now, other developed nations have dealt with this problem. Most developed nations have gun deaths in numbers that you can count on the fingers of your hands in a year. The United States has more than 30,000 gun deaths a year, almost half of which are murders. We've had more than 300 mass shootings this year. Here, even before the middle of November, we've had more than 300 mass shootings. This is out of control, yet other nations have managed to avoid this carnage through sane, reasonable gun laws. 68% of Americans want stricter gun laws. And we live in a democracy. Ostensibly, our government represents our interest. 68% of Americans want more strict gun laws. 68% of us should be allowed to do what they do in Japan, where there's 7 gun deaths a year, France, England, Australia, Germany, Denmark, but our democracy is threatened by an oligarchy of moneyed interests that sincerely do not care how many tens of thousands of people are killed, from elementary school children to innocent adults going to a Bible study. I get the fact that most guns will never be used in any criminal manner, and that many people, including virtually all members of my family, feel more secure when they have a gun. And many others just love to hunt. Some have treasured family heirlooms that they don't want to give up. However, in the face of 30,000 deaths every year in America, how you feel, what you like, what you prefer, is not a secondary, it's not a tertiary concern. It is an irrational denial of facts. I don't care what you like or what you feel. You don't get to threaten the security of worshipers, students, moviegoers, and shoppers. You need to just grow up and accept the tiny size of your boy parts and your lower than average IQ and deal with it. But you don't get to own weapons of mass destruction. I'm waiting. America is not God's chosen country. Neither Republicans nor Democrats are God's chosen political party, and the modern state of Israel isn't God's chosen people. Look, guys, saying that the Jews are God's chosen people, or that God blesses America in ways that are unique or different from the way that God blesses Kazakhstan or Lithuania, is patently absurd. The Red Sox did not win the World Series because Catholic nuns in Boston area convents had placed wagers on them and were praying for them during Mass. God is not a person. People may prefer blue over red. People may prefer football over basketball. People may choose to be Republicans or Democrats, but God is not a people. Jews wrote a religious book that claimed that they were God's favorite. Well, guess what? Muslims wrote a religious book that claimed that they were God's favorite people. Both were pure and simple exercises in nationalistic narcissism. There is no evidence for saying that there is a divine imprimatur on any nation, party, race, or government. As you've heard me say before, God doesn't write books. And though I do not believe that God either wrote or inspired the Bible, I will tell you that I've studied it for more years than I care to admit. And I assure you that no rational person who read it and even mildly took it seriously would ever vote to build a wall on the southern border of America. Amen. No one who ever read the book and took it even mildly seriously would be in favor of taking children away from their parents, or would deny health care to the sick, or security to the aged, or human rights to anyone, all of which makes me disinclined to take evangelicals and fundamentalists seriously as a religion. It doesn't look like a religion. It looks like a cult intent upon indoctrinating and defending prejudice. And the sooner the whole damn thing goes away, the better off we will all be. Now, that's not just my opinion. I also happen to be right. Burn down the mission. Set them free. Now, decisions about abortion should be left up to individual women. There is nowhere more clear than in the matter of religious views around abortion than the need for us to get clear about our thinking. Catholics and evangelicals are reared to believe that a fetus in the womb is as valuable as one of the preschoolers that they are very consistently demonstrating that they are willing to deny food, housing, health care, and education to. That is to say that they assume that the welfare of actual children that are walking around on their own 2 feet is none of their concern. All I'm saying is that a fetus in a woman's womb is exactly the same. None of their business. Again, it's fine to have passionate feelings, even in the absence of evidence, about the decision to terminate a pregnancy or to choose abortion. But if you have those passionate feelings and you want to lower the abortion rate, You have no right to do it by taking individual choice away from women. However, I've got good news for you. In the unlikely event that you are even slightly sincere about your desire to reduce abortions, we know how to cut the abortion rate in half this year. I mean, before New Year's Day this year. We know because we saw it happen. During the dot-com bubble, economic bubble during the Clinton years, when jobs were suddenly plentiful and wages were going up, the abortion rate immediately went down by over 50%. Women most often choose to terminate a pregnancy when they realize that they cannot afford to raise a child. When you raise the economic welfare of young women, the abortion rate goes down. It's a win-win-win program. You alleviate poverty, you reduce human suffering, and you reduce the abortion rate at all time. What religious person could possibly oppose that? Except for Catholics and evangelicals, I mean. You know, what thinking religious person could possibly oppose that? Finally, no religion has any real information about either heaven or hell. And finally, we get back here to where we began. I know of no reason why anyone believes that there is a heaven or hell. It seems like a bit of basic human narcissism to believe without a shred of evidence that the universe cannot go on without any one of us. However, believe what you wish, just follow Virgil's advice and don't talk about things you can't possibly know anything about. Don't pass along magical thinking to your children, and don't engage in debates about matters either unknown or unknowable. It is nice to think of religious images of heaven as being true, and that when this imperfect and pain-riddled world is gone, there might be a blissful eternal existence for all of us and our deceased pets, maybe even for all the fish, chickens, pigs, and cows that we've eaten along the way, provided that they are willing to forgive us. And on some days, at a certain level, I would find a great deal of satisfaction in a schadenfreude sort of way in believing that hell was literal. Because I know some folks that have it coming. And not all of them currently live or work in the White House. You all giggle, but you know I'm not the only one here that kind of wishes he would just go ahead and go to hell. You know I'm not alone in this, don't you? There is, however, no evidence for either hell or karma or even divine intervention. So if it's up to me to have a fully evolved faith, a faith in which I personally work, sacrifice, teach peace, justice, equality, fairness, and mercy. I love this meme, and David and I have even talked about turning this into a t-shirt that proclaims that I'm willing to vote to prevent gun violence, I'll vote for transgender rights, to protect Roe v. Wade, LGBTQ rights, for environmental concerns, for civil rights, for health care and immigrant rights. But folks, voting, you will never vote justice into existence. You'll never vote mercy into existence. Voting is part of it, but it's painfully close to the way we liberals think that by having informed opinions that we've actually done something. It's nice that compassion and empathy informs your opinions. That's why we're all here together. But we need more than nice thoughts. I'm going to close today with a favorite quote from the 19th century evangelist Alexander Campbell. To get on your knees and pray for anything that you will not then stand up and work for is an insult to God and a disappointment to yourself.
Amen.
Go ahead. It's all right. Who told you all to be timid today? Or am I scaring you? Am I a little tough today? Real religion takes place not in an imaginary world, but in the real world. Not in the world of wishful thinking, but in the world where you spend your money and go to work and raise your kids and make decisions and vote. Real faith is demonstrated by substantive action, personal sacrifice, and marrying your beliefs to your actual practices. Evidence-based faith does not dismiss the mysteries of the universe that might be true, but it focuses not on what cannot be known, but what is unavoidably true. The time for childish games is past. It's time for us to grow up and make a real difference and burn down the mission.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.